I'm an introvert, but I'm not intimidated by a lot of people. When David Crabtree walked through the halls of Duke, I was intimidated by him. He was someone who would always, well, I guess you had to work, so you always had a tie on, and a jacket and a suit. He was what I aspired to be. And then word got out that things were happening in my life, and my life was changing. And David was the first person to interview me for the news, and I look very fondly back on that because he is not only a gifted journalist, he's a gifted storyteller, a gifted friend, and someone who knows how to tell stories in an appropriate and healthy way. So it is my honor to welcome Deacon David Crabtree to the pulpit today.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Rob, thank you for that. One of the things he left out at the time I was a student at Duke, and still am to some degree, is that I was always the oldest person in the class. And the only one with a tie on, and so people didn't know if I was a narc or if I was a former student or what I was doing there. But I was welcome to be there, and I feel the welcoming spirit this morning in this place. And I'm so humbled to be here and to have the opportunity to speak to you for just a few minutes. As I look through this door, through that small window, I see again the first sight that I saw when I walked in this beautiful building this morning in your lobby. And that is that gorgeous tree, that beautiful, full of life, full of color, full of welcoming, full of love tree. That is very special to me. I felt, as soon as I walked in, of leaving the light of the outside and the sunshine of the outside, the immediate light of the inside. I seen such boldness, and not only the colors of the tree, but what that tree represents. So again, I'm thankful to be here. That was somewhat of an epiphany for me to see that. We just heard the story of the wise men. We sang We Three Kings, one of the first Christmas carols I can remember learning as a child. Last night I was thinking as I was preparing for today, and the thought came to me, how wise were the wise men? They followed a star. They listened to their hearts. They followed the dream they'd been given. Did they know who they were paying homage to? There's a lot of discussion about this among scholars. Pastor Rob is the scholar. I am a storyteller, wanting to learn from people like Rob. I don't know, and I don't know if it matters how wise they were. But I think in some other traditions, Buddhists who recognize a 2-year-old as the Dalai Lama, others who see in others as they see them who they are or who they're not. Did they know? They had heard that this was to be the King of the Jews. Did they have any idea he was also to be the Savior of the world? Doesn't really matter. They were there. They've taught us. They've taught us about giving. But I still have to wonder, was there, in any of the three, as they're looking at this tiny baby, in a small cave, that manger scene, where it was, did they know? Did they have an epiphany of, oh my, I'm not sure what I'm looking at, but something is changing even within me. Epiphanies are wonderful things. Sometimes they bring us great delight and great joy to think, oh, I never knew that. Oh, I see what you're talking about now. Oh, that really is a lump in my breast. come in all shapes and sizes and wonders and can bring us anything. And the greatest thing, I think, an epiphany is, and its gift, is it allows us to continue to learn. It allows us to continue to be open to new ways of thinking, to new understanding, to a new grasp of God's love. I read on that beautiful tree so many of the messages about love. And I, again, was so humbled. I realized on this day of understanding and being open to epiphanies, again, that what we do and what we say matters. Our words matter. Our actions matter. We're reminded daily that the vast canyon of difference between intent and impact. That there are times that we end up hurting people or leaving people out, and we find out later, oh my gosh, I had no idea what I said would impact you that way. That was not my intent.
Amen.
So we have to realize that what we're doing and what we're saying may have a lasting impression on people that brings an epiphany to them of, oh, I didn't know that. And more importantly, brings it back to us as we look into the mirror. Their faces reflect to us, wow, I had no idea. I have a painting in my home by an artist who's done wonderful representations of the Stations of the Cross in ways I hadn't seen before. One is a Roman soldier who has a hammer in his hand. And all you can see is the extension of a forearm and a hand and a nail going into it. You know who that hand and forearm belongs to. But with great force, the soldier is hammered. And I looked at it, I remember the first time I saw it, I looked at it and thought, how profound, and yet he was only doing his job. That was his job. His intent was just to do his job. He didn't know that his impact would be to split time. So on this day of Epiphany, I ask you to encourage one another, to encourage me to remember that all we do, that all we say, as the people of God, each and every one of us created in the image of God, carry with us the knowledge that we are still learning. With every breath we are given, we have another opportunity to be surprised, to have an epiphany, and to be humble enough to say, I didn't know that. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for loving me. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to love in return.
Amen.
Thanks be to God. Amen.
Let's give David a hand this morning. What an amazing word. As our ushers come forward this morning to receive our morning offering tithes, I'm going to ask that you give as God has laid on your heart this morning. Ain't God good? I said, ain't God good? I don't think there's anybody listening this morning. Is God good in your life? Let me hear you make some noise this morning. Help us, Lord. Father, bless this offering and the tithing this morning. May it go toward the glory of you, the building of your church, all the things that this church stands for in this community. May you use everything to your glory. In Jesus' name, and all God's people said, amen. Great is thy faithfulness, O God. You wrestle with the sinner's restless heart. You lead us by still waters into mercy, and nothing can keep us apart. So remember your people, remember your children, remember your promises, O God. Your grace is enough, your grace is enough, your grace is enough for me to get. Oh, your grace is enough, your grace is enough, your grace is enough for me. Great is your love, great is your love and justice, God of Jacob. You use the weak to lead the strong. You lead us in a song of your salvation, and all your people sing along. So remember your people, remember your children, remember your promises, O God. Your grace is enough, your grace is enough, your grace is enough for me. Your grace is enough, your grace is enough, your grace is enough for me. Sing that second verse again. Listen to the words. Great is your love and justice, God of Jacob. You use the weak to lead the strong. You lead us in the song of your salvation, and all your people sing along. So remember your people, remember your children, remember your promises, O God. Your grace is enough, your grace is enough, your grace is enough for me. Your grace is enough, your grace is enough, your grace is enough for me. Your grace is enough, your grace is enough, your grace is enough, your grace is enough for me. Your grace is enough, your grace is enough, your grace is enough for me. Give God a hand clap of praise in this house this morning. We're going to have a little bit of pregame worship this morning since we have a lot on the program. But you know, God loves you this morning. And I believe He's calling us to a mighty work. I believe God has a plan for this church and all of us in it. He is calling us out to be a witness in this community for Him in this place. Sing the song if you will. Call me out upon the sing it all day long. But unless we're really willing to put our money where our mouth is, to put action where intent is, then we're just singing words. And I don't know about you this morning, but I just don't want to just sing words. I want to put action where intent is. When God calls and the Spirit leads, I want to go. No matter what that looks like. That's scary. So this morning, I want you to examine your heart just a moment. Before we sing that bridge again, ask yourself, am I really willing to go? Am I really willing to go where I can trust, where my faith doesn't have any limitations or borders? Regardless of what it looks like or what it sounds like, am I really willing? Am I dedicated? Am I really willing this morning? Because the love of God is stronger than anything, and the vision God has for His people is greater than anything this church has ever imagined. God's called us. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you call me. Take me deep, let my feet never soul will rest in your embrace. My head moves, you are mine.
We come now to the time of love feast. It was started amongst friends for the purpose of remembering that friends are friends forever, as Michael W. Smith says. I'll invite our deacons and those serving to go to the back and begin to pass out the elements of simple bread and juice. It's apple juice. It's not grape juice. It's not like communion. As this is happening, I'd invite you not to eat it right away. The point is to actually have some anticipation. I know that's going to be hard for some of you. But we'll all eat it together. So you'll all get a cup with some juice in it. You'll all get some bread. And as we're doing that, I'm going to pray really quick, and then I'll invite us to sing the hymn, Be Thou My Vision, as you are being distributed your love feast. Let us pray. Be present at our table, Lord, be here and everywhere adored. Thy creatures bless, and grant that we may feast in paradise with thee. Amen. I hope that everyone has been served in an appropriate fashion. Let us now eat and remember that we are loved, no matter our story. I'm going to go ahead and read the scripture so that we can keep moving. The scripture comes from 1 John, the 4th chapter. Beloved, let us love one another because love is from God. And everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, for God is love. God's love was revealed among us in this way. God sent His only Son into the world so that we might live through Him. And this is love. Not that we loved God, but that He loved us and sent His Son to be the atoning sacrifice for our sins. Beloved, since God loved us so much, we ought to love one another. No one has ever seen God, but if we love one another, God lives in us, and His love is perfected in us. By this we know that we abide in Him and He in us, because He has given us His Spirit. And we have seen and do testify that the Father has sent His Son as the Savior of the world. God abides in those who confess that Jesus is the Son of God, and they abide in God. So we have known and believed the love of God has for us. God is love. And those who abide in love abide in God, and God abides in them. Love has been perfected among us in this, that we have boldness on the day of judgment, because as He is, so are we in this world. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. We love because, we love because He first loved us. Those who say, I love God, and hate their brothers or sisters are liars. For those who do not love a brother or sister whom they have seen cannot love God whom they have not seen. This commandment we have from Him in this: those who love God must love their brothers and sisters also. Here begins the lesson. I hope that was a delicious snack and it can save you on your way to lunch. In all seriousness, though, one thing you don't know about your pastor is that I love Old Salem. I remember going to Old Salem as a child and now as an adult, and doing the love feast, what we just did now. It's a beautiful tradition, and I highly commend it to you. Another thing you don't know about your pastor that you may be interested to know is that I am a nerd. You wouldn't have guessed, right? In elementary and middle school, I was the science fair champion. No one could compete with the dynamic duo of Robert Lee III, my dad, and Robert Lee IV. It didn't hurt that my dad was also an engineer and a science nerd as well, but alas, I was the science fair champion, and that's really all that mattered in the Statesville area. Today I invite you, if you will, for about a moment, to put your science caps on and think about Epiphany with me on this Epiphany Sunday. This is going to get Star Trek or Star Wars, depending on what you like, real quick, so bear with me. The closest solar system to us is Proxima Centauri, which is 4 light years away. Polaris, our North Star, is 680 light years away. I'm getting somewhere, trust me. The Lagoon Nebula, which is the farthest one that we can see, is 10 billion to 15 billion light years away. What does that have to do with anything? You might be thinking he's lost it. It's safe to say that that star appeared in the night sky in the Bethlehem area around 2 years before the Magi arrived in Bethlehem to pay homage, based on our interpretation of Scripture. With that in mind, what is astounding, mind-boggling, life-changing, is that it would have been at least 2 years before Jesus was born that the star was being formed, if it was the closest solar system away. If it was the Lagoon Nebula, the farthest one away, it would have been 10 billion years before Christ that star had formed, and then the light was shot across space into our night sky. Now, what is he getting at? Is he doing another science experiment? What I'm getting at is that the plan of salvation, the plan of Epiphany, was well in action before Jesus arrived on the scene in Bethlehem. Things were going on before Jesus showed up. I wonder if it's like that in your life as well. That maybe things are starting to happen, things are changing, things are happening, and all of a sudden Jesus shows up, and then you look back and you see, oh, I see what was going on. Hindsight's 20/20, right? The plan of salvation was in effect before Jesus was even born, before all of us were even born. God has been at work for literally billions of years just to get to you. God has not stopped and will not stop until He reaches you. The reality, though, is that we want salvation for our club. Even here at this church, we want it to be for people who think the way we do, or vote the way we do, or worship the way we do, or love the way we do. And we want salvation, but we want it exclusively. I think it's most evident this week that salvation is not exclusive.
Amen.
We of the Christian faith, we saw the overtures of war in the Middle East. It would be easy for us just to turn a blind eye and say, you know what, I'm done. Turn a blind eye to our Iranian brothers and sisters simply because they're not part of the club that we've made here at Unifour Church. But before you get mad at me, before you turn your back, let me remind you that the Magi came from the East. And scholarly research suggests that they came from parts of Iran.
Yes.
God includes everyone.
Yes. Amen.
God does not exclude anyone. And it is preposterous for Christians to think that we can be exclusive.
Amen. Amen.
What I'm getting at is that salvation is all about our response as well as God's plan. We respond. The worship, what we do here on Sunday mornings is a response to what God does in the world. We respond to God's grace by saying we have no fear. It may look bleak out there, people. I was tired this week. I couldn't even turn on the news just because of what was going on in our world. Sorry, David, I know you report the news, but it was hard to turn on. We need some hope. We need an epiphany of a new kind today.
Amen.
We need someone to say that the hope of our lives is that God is always coming to us before we can ever get to God.
Amen.
God is like an adoring, loving child who says, ready or not, here I come.
Yes.
And the truth is we're never really ready. But God lovingly waits, patiently pleads. Ye who are weary, come home. The hope of our lives is that God is always coming to us. But Epiphany is an invitation not only to follow God, but to come home. The road ahead is not going to be easy for any of us.
Sure.
This world is not in good shape. We are not better off than where we were a few years back. But it is the road that we have been gifted to take. And I say that seriously. It is a gift to walk this road. Because it is the road of the Magi. It's the road of Epiphany. Epiphany for us should be a reminder that tyrant kings of the earth may have power, but they live in fear because Christ is about to do something new. Epiphany is a reminder for us that institutions, whether they be palaces or churches, may think they have everything figured out, but Christ will sit as judge and king one day. I think what scares so many of our leaders and our institutions today is that they see the power and the change slipping through their fingers, much like how Herod felt when the Magi came by Jerusalem. So ultimately, you're left with a choice. We can return to the empire. We can go back to Jerusalem. We can tell Herod all we know and let the kingdoms of this world win. Or we let the wise know and be different. Let's go home a different way, knowing that it is the way that ultimately leads to life, and life in its fullest iteration. Friends, I implore you, don't be caught in Herod's palace when you should be in Bethlehem. Don't be caught in Herod's palace when you should be in Bethlehem. Because the choice is ultimately up to you. Your preacher can't force you. I can try, I can plead, I can implore, but you have to decide where you will end up. And in the end, what matters is that we're walking each other home, we're figuring this out together, and hopefully we'll all end up in a place that literally is translated as Bethlehem, the house of bread. The house of bread and abundance. The house where things are going to be okay again. Our world is hurting, but the story is still being written. Thanks be to God. Amen. I am acutely aware that we come from a variety of traditions and realities. Some of us come from backwoods Baptists, some of us are Catholic, and all of us are in between. And that's okay. That's actually a really beautiful thing about who we are as a church. I was raised United Methodist. I love my church in Statesville. In 2012, I served as a delegate to the General Conference, which is the top legislative body. It's the church council on steroids for the United Methodist Church. I was the nerd again. We wanted to do church stuff instead of play football. But I think in 2012, I started to realize that there was pain going on because of the church's stance about LGBTQ individuals. And I just couldn't be a part of it, and that kind of led me to an awakening and a reckoning with my own life. If you've turned on the news and stayed on the news long enough to get past the Iran coverage, the second most coverage story this week has been the United Methodist Church's response to LGBTQ individuals and offering a split of the denomination. It's heartbreaking. And for those of us who kind of swim in Methodist circles, whether that's by going to Duke or being raised Methodist, it's a really hard reality for us to live into. And I know many of you know what a church split is like and how painful that can be. So I reached out to my friend Jan Lawrence, who is at the Reconciling Ministries Network, and I asked her what we could do. Because I don't know if you're like me, but you start to pray a little bit and you gotta act. You gotta do something. You can't just sit and pray for too long. I get bored, if I'm honest. I gotta do something to help. And Jan said, honestly, we are trying to figure out a way to make sense of this for LGBTQ individuals in our pews. Jan is the executive director of the Reconciling Ministries Network, which is the agency that works with LGBTQ United Methodists, literally helping them resource and find ways to either get out of their situations that they're in that are painful into different churches, or to make their situations more beautiful by staying where they are. It's a beautiful organization. Again, I encourage you to look it up, Reconciling Ministries Network. And they're going to need all the help we can get. They can get. And so I am calling for a special offering today. I'm going to ask our ushers to come forward. There are 2 offering plates right there. As Alan plays something, we're going to pray really quick, and then we're going to pass the plates. And I would invite you to give generously. This will go directly to Reconciling Ministries Network, and I want to remind you that this is not going to an organization that is in any way harming LGBTQ individuals. This is not going to the denominational agency. This is going to a nonprofit that works directly with people affected by this reality. So with that in mind, let us pray. Gracious God, you remind us that we have brothers and sisters across denominational lines, across realities, across even time and space. You have united us in a bond of love that no man, no church, no denomination can ever break. And so we ask that you bless the giving of these tithes to go to the fruition of your kingdom here on earth. This we ask in your name. Amen. Welcome back to Dr. Phil. I really want this to be an opportunity for us. There's going to be a chance to ask some questions. I'm also conscious of time. We're good. Don't worry. You're going to ask the Lord, all that jazz. But I do want us to have a conversation today with David, because David is someone who is very well versed in what we try to talk about here at this church. He is someone, I mean, honestly, he's a local celebrity in Raleigh, if we're honest. You can't go to a restaurant without people recognizing him and asking for a picture. So, just saying, I don't know what that means, David, but we love you and we're thankful for you being here. I think I want to open up with, you have covered some of the most amazing realities that the religion world has seen, from Mother Teresa's funeral, from John Paul's funeral. Tell us about some of those realities.
Well, the realities are that wherever you are in the world, there are people of faith. Everywhere you turn, there are people of God. And you begin to realize how much larger the world is outside your universe, in your circle. Whether you're here in Catawba County, or you're in Wake County, or you're in New York, or Tennessee, wherever it may be, when you go to another country and begin to see what they do and how people touch their lives, it's an epiphany. In covering Mother Teresa's funeral, I remember in this Hindu country, with so many million people, there they were coming to stand in line in 97-degree heat with high humidity in early September, just to pass by her body, a Roman Catholic. And I would ask them, why is it so important to you as Hindu to come and remember Mother Teresa? And without fail, people would say, because she was mother of all. Mm-hmm. She took care of us. Didn't matter what the religion was. But the greatest experience I had as a native Southerner, growing up in Tennessee, a white male, the photographer I worked with, may he rest in peace, a young man named Mark Copeland, who was killed in a helicopter accident about 15 years ago. He and I were walking down the street of Calcutta, and we were the only two white faces on that street. And Mark said, I wish those people would stop staring at me. And I said, Kobe, I think you just got a taste of what it's like to be black in Knoxville, Tennessee. Well, maybe so, but I don't like it. I said, I don't think they like it either. I also, on that trip, had the chance to cover the story of a former Massachusetts police officer, motorcycle officer, who had been in an accident, had a near-death experience, and on the table in the emergency department heard a voice saying, Mother Teresa, go to Calcutta. When he recovered, he sold everything he had, moved to Calcutta, ended up working on the streets, taking medical supplies to lepers. And on that same trip, I remember meeting a man who was suffering leprosy, and he played a recorder, a small flute, as he was being treated. And I thought back to my Sunday school lessons growing up Baptist and hearing those stories of lepers. The 10 lepers Jesus healed and only one came back. Or leper colonies, or pushing people away, putting people in their own internment camps of the day. And I remember hugging that leper that day. And again, my friend Mark didn't want to be close to me. He said, you touched him. And I'm not patting myself on the back, but I thought, why would I not? Why would I not? I had come to Raleigh from Denver, Rob, and I worked, and at the time the AIDS crisis was hitting a real peak in Colorado, and I remember doing stories at an AIDS hospice and talking with the companion of a young man who was dying and asking him what made their relationship so special. And he talked about he had never seen love like that before. He had never experienced love from another human being. And I remember being embraced by him. And why these stories keep coming to me this morning, I'm not really sure, other than the fact that I know that reaching out and touching one another is so very important, no matter what, no matter why, no matter how. A friend of mine who was a chaplain in Duke wrote an essay one time where she had experienced, as she was a chaplain, a person who had a horrible experience with their nose, and their nose was all clogged with stuff, and there was no nurse, and this person said, would you just help clean my nose? And with her gloves that HIPAA required, she couldn't do it. And she finally said, the heck with these rules. She took off her gloves and cleaned the person's nose. And then wrote an essay about it later saying, thank you, God, for not wearing gloves when you washed away my tears and wiped away my tears. So, from Calcutta to that moment, these experiences we have can happen anytime, any place, but they make us more aware. And what you were saying a moment ago, in renewing us in your homily, do we want to go back to Herod and go back to the palace, go back to the empire, or do we want to go to Bethlehem? As you were singing and challenging us, do we want to just sing this, or do we want to live into it? Those bookends renewed in me the fact that in my job, my role is to speak truth to power, which is really difficult to do sometimes. And so whether it's Calcutta or Catawba County or wherever I may be, I will take with me those two great lessons. And forgive me for the long, convoluted answer. My ADD kicks in every once in a while,
Yeah,
and I'm all over the place.
Isn't that great? We got a little fireplace for our fireside chat. I want to give you the chance. We got two more questions. I'm going to ask one more, and then Leo's going to close with a question that I'm sure he has. What do you guys want to know about what it's like to be a famous news anchor in Raleigh, North Carolina? What it's like to cover some of these stories? If you'd like, we can bring a mic to you. Anybody have questions?
Don't be shy.
Dream has a question. Leo, thank you.
I thought that sounded Jesse Raphael.
Come on down.
My question is, how do you separate your personal opinions from what you have to say online? I mean, on TV.
That's a marvelous question, Dreama. It's a heck of a balance. We're not robots. People project onto us what they want to hear from us. Conservatives call me liberal, liberals call me conservative. I used to think, well, that's pretty good, too. Maybe I'm walking the right line of trying to find balance. However, you hit a point where balance takes on a new definition. If you know something to be untrue, as best as you know truth to be, you know, we're still trying to figure out what that word truth means. I mean, for 2,000 years we've been saying what is truth, and it tends, you know, some truths expire. I have learned recently. And so you try to wrap it in this cloth of saying, help me understand this. How does your math work that 1 + 1 = 2? And I'll give you an example. A few years ago, after the legislature had cut taxes and also cut funding to education and would not budge on Medicare, all of these issues, I ran into a member of the state Senate at Harris Teeter. I said, Senator, how are you? He said, I'm doing pretty well. You know, we've got the budget in order, we've got a surplus we're building, and this is the same senator who 2 months ago had said there's no poverty in North Carolina. And I said, Senator, while you're here, have you got a few minutes? And he said, well, sure. I said, no, can you ride with me? Because I want to show you poverty about 5 minutes from here in southeast Raleigh. Now, David, you know I didn't mean that. Y'all twisted that. And I said, I don't think so. I said, I want you to understand, you and I are both privileged, and we're entitled. I picked up bottles out of a ditch. I know what that can be like. Poverty is all around us. Whether it's financial or spiritual or emotional. But for you in a seat of power to stand up and say there's no poverty, it sounded pretty arrogant. And I just want you to know that's not the case. And he sort of got huffy and walked away, and that was okay. I just knew I had to let my personal feeling be known. That comes out on the air sometimes.
Yeah.
And when it does, there are times I get my wrist slapped. Understand, Dreamer, I'm not always right. But I quote Dr. King here. When Dr. King had decided to take a stance against the Vietnam War, after he saw not only the inordinate amount of African American young men who were in the military and being sent to Vietnam, but he saw the dropping of napalm by this country on innocent people, and said, if our country can do that to these people in this war, to their civil rights, how can we ever take a stand on civil rights here? He was roundly criticized by that, by leaders within the civil rights movement. Martin, don't do this. Keep your eye on the prize. Don't do this. And he was asked about that in a news conference one day, and this is just burned into my memory bank, where he said, I don't care what the other civil rights leaders are saying. I don't care what their stance is. All I know, this has touched my heart, and I have to stand on this. If it costs me everything, it cost me that. But I can't live not taking a stand on that. Now, I'm in no way comparing myself to Dr. King on any level. But when I've seen things that you have to take a stand on, being quiet no longer is an option. So how do I separate it? Very carefully, and sometimes I fail to do it. But I will say this as one last thing to that. Rob and I were talking about this earlier. Theology wraps itself within us in everything we do every day. It's like DNA. You can't separate it. And so with what I've taught, and thanks be to God, with what I've been given and how my life has been restored, woe be it to me if I don't speak up. Thank you for the question.
Are there any other questions from the congregation?
I'll keep the answer shorter, I promise. Don't be shy.
Going once? Going twice? Anybody? Okay. Well, I've got my question for you. You know, I think when you live in the spotlight, it's easy for people to, as you said, project realities onto you. The hard part in all of that is to find your own hope, or to find your wellspring of hope, and where do you find hope? I mean, I was watching some of the news clips that we were doing this week about the Methodist Church, about Iran, and all this stuff. And it's easy for us in the room to just turn off the news when we don't want to hear it. You're kind of in the weeds, if you will. I mean, you have to know, or at least be aware. So I guess the question that I have is, where do you find hope in it all? Where do you see God?
I created this image, or I think I acknowledged the image created for me, that God is always looking over my shoulder. Whether I'm sitting or now standing at the anchor desk, or sitting at the computer, or conducting an interview, that there's this awareness of responsibility that comes with that. It's also an awareness not to take myself too seriously, that the news sure doesn't depend on me. When I'm not there, we still have a newscast. Everything goes along just fine. But not to overcompensate for that. There are times that you realize when the newscast is over, you go home and you've just absorbed all of this stuff, which is a nice word to use, whether it's child abuse, a story, or a story of domestic abuse, or a story of torture, or a story of war, or a story of poverty, or a story of death and destruction. And then you have to turn and say, how about the weather today? And you want to find a way to numb yourself at times from that and say, I've got to escape. How do I do that? And then you have to realize, if you're doing it, it's what I was created to do. And so that shield of armor that we are implored to put on, you have to wear that. That helmet of salvation has to be worn. Mine has a lot of dents in it. Some that others have caused, some that I've caused myself by running into something I shouldn't have run into. But knowing there's a foundation that we will get through this, that I will get through this, because of what I have lived through and seen, I can't deny hope exists. I mean, it's not a choice. It's like falling in love. Choosing hope is not an option. It's just there. It's truly there. You just read from 1 John. And the words that come from 1 John, I have tried my best to talk with either politicians about, or my colleagues, or friends, or peers. And that is, perfect love casts out all fear. Whew. That is hard to live into. But it does. And yet, instead of leaning on the Word of God, leaning on God's love for humanity and its creation, and understanding that perfect love takes care of everything, ultimately, we look to start another war. We look to say, I've got a bigger weapon than you do. We look to say, I'm smarter than you are. I am better than you are. Instead of, come to me, all you that are burdened and heavy laden, and I will refresh you. Amen. That's hard to do when you're facing cancer. It is hard to do when someone has just walked out on you. It's hard to do when you've lost your job and you haven't had a job in 18 months. It's hard to do when you can't get traction in your life. It is so hard to do when you've been rejected and marginalized. It's not easy to do. But I just know. And I can't tell you always how I know. But I know we will get through it. Without pain? No. No. Without suffering? No. Without tribulation? No. Without making our own mistakes? No. But we will. But perfect love does cast out all fear. Iran this past week, when I just raised the question in the newsroom, Friday, was this a wag the dog situation? Because all of a sudden we weren't talking about impeachment anymore. You know, I was looked at as if I had horns. I live in an area where the vast majority of the soldiers that have just been sent overseas are from Fort Bragg. We report on them. How dare you say anything like that? How dare you say anything that flies in the face of patriotism? That's an entirely another story. What is patriotism? We could debate that forever and ever. I almost got run out of church one time because there was an American flag hanging over the pulpit while I was preaching. And I just said, where's our allegiance? If they had tomatoes, it would have been like Shakespeare's time. If they threw them. But
I think the preachers know what that's like, though. Most preachers know what that's like.
Yeah.
Right?
yeah, how do I get through it? It's knowing when you have lived at the bottom of a barrel, whatever that is, and your life has been restored, which is my story, and you survive that, and you move on through life, and realizing that we are put on this life, this world, on this earth, in this world, ultimately to die, that you begin to embrace it differently and say, let's find ways to make that difference. Let's find ways to pick up the phone and call as you did to say, what can we do to help? And realize that what we are facing that we maybe can have an impact on is right in front of us. That if we try to take on the entire issue, the entire community, the entire state, the entire country, the entire world will be swallowed by that. But what's right in front of us, maybe we can have an impact on. All ministry is one-on-one. Ultimately, it is one-on-one, face to face. God loves us, and that's the only way I can get through it. I don't know where I would be now without that runner.
Amen.
Way to go. So Leo, I think is going to close us out with a question.
I found tremendous hope from your messages today. And one of the things that we're all passionate about is our youth. I think we're very blessed to have a lot of young babies and that will soon become young adults here in our church. If there was one message that you can leave with us, having the experiences that you've had in your life, what message would that be for our young people?
Be yourself. Above all, be yourself. Take a stand. Realize, young people, your life is your life. It's not your parents' life. It's not your boyfriend's life, your girlfriend's life, your mate's life, your friend's life, your peers' lives. Don't bow to that pressure of what everybody else wants you to be. God plants a seed in you. I can remember the first time I saw, I've had two experiences, if you'll allow me to share this, of where I walked into a place and I knew that's where I was supposed to be. One was the first radio station I ever walked into, and I was just, oh my. Oh my. It was an epiphany. The second was in the cloister inside the Duke Divinity School. The first time I was invited there, and I thought, and that was 45 years later, and I thought, oh, this is the same feeling I had. I'm supposed to be here. I don't have a choice in this. I've got to do this. As opposed to someone saying to you, well, how are you going to make any money doing that? How are you going to support a family? That's what you do. You want to study science? Don't you want to come play football league? You want to study religion? All that God stuff, what are you talking about? Come on. Whatever you're called to do, young people, pay attention to it. Because that thought that's inside that you're reluctant to verbalize because you're afraid somebody else is going to say, what? God put that there. He may put it there, God may put it there to make you stand out. And you may not feel like you're standing out today. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now. That seed that was planted has taken root. Life came mighty over it. It stands. It has been bent by the wind and storms and gone through seasons and renewal constantly. But it's because you paid attention to yourself. Love yourself, young people. Love yourself. Love one another.
Amen.
Your neighbor is everywhere. Be open. Love people with whom you disagree.
Yes.
Which is so hard. Rob said it in the message today. When we're amongst people of like mind, we love each other. People used to say to me, well, you're prejudiced, you're biased in your reporting. You know, when you and I agree, there's no bias. Isn't that amazing? No matter what we believe, the moment we disagree, we're biased about it. So young people, be yourself, take a stand, love yourself. Don't be afraid to take a chance.
Amen. Well, friends, I know you will thank David at the conclusion of our service. Yes, you can, of course.
And just one more, because it goes back to your original question. I would say this to young people and to all of us who are young at heart, who are in this room. Dr. Phil was that great philosopher, Dr. Phil, I heard one time at 3 o'clock in the morning. When I was struggling and couldn't sleep, said, keep your head up, because if you're looking down, you may miss what's around the corner that just walked past you that meant something. Most remarkable story I think I've covered was during Hurricane Florence. I was in Fayetteville because Cape Fear River was rising. And I was literally 4 or 5 minutes before the live broadcast at 6 o'clock. And this woman rode up on a bicycle. She had a little hair steamer bag in her basket. And she said, "Do you want to know what the homeless people are doing?" I said, "Sure." And she said, "Several of us live under the bridge right down there, and the water's risen, and we lost our home. Even the homeless were homeless." And she had this bag, that Harris Teeter bag. I said, "May I interview you?" And she said, "Sure." So I asked her not about how she became homeless, but about her home that she had just lost. And she said, "Everything I own is in this bag." And she started telling me what was in it. And what I remember was there was a bar of soap and a towel in there.
that even in the midst of the squalor and everything she had to live in, there was this desire to keep her dignity and to be able to bathe and be clean.
Her name is Judy. We finished the interview, and I told the photographer, I said, pull a clip of this. I've got to get this on TV. He said, what do you want me to pull? I said, the part of her describing what's in the bag. And, before we go on live, I'm able to talk to the producer, and I said, I don't know what you have to kill, what story you have to kill, but I've got something that I've got to get on TV. Just trust me. And I have a good enough a relationship with this producer. She said, okay. The very last thing I talked about, I said, a lot of what we cover, even in floods and hurricanes, is predictable. I want you to meet an unpredictable part of the story, and her name is Judy. And we played that sound of her describing what was there. I could hardly get through the newscast. I knew what would happen. There would be an incredible outpouring of support. People saying, as you do when you call, what can we do to help? And we directed people to the Salvation Army and the Red Cross because we trust them and knew they could distribute things. The greatest part of that story, Dr. Phil, had I not been looking up, I would not have seen her. There was statistics. Oh, even the homeless can become homeless. I think I said, and I'm a big Bob Dylan fan, I said, I think Bob Dylan was wrong. When you ain't got nothing, you still do have something to lose. Yet in the midst of that, again, this fact that she wanted to have a sense of dignity renewed in me my faith that we can do things to make a difference. Whether it's picking up the phone and calling your friend, whether it's reaching out to a neighbor, whether it's helping someone that it's so easy to turn away from. Stop and remember, all they may be seeking is a recognition that they matter too. And if I had not been doing the job I do, I would never have had that opportunity. Nor would I have had the opportunity to be with you today. I don't know you, but I love you. And I mean that from my heart. And I thank you.
Thank you.
Amen. Before we sing our closing refrain of O Come, O Come Emmanuel, this is the last time we're doing it, so enjoy it. 2 times through the refrain. We're going to sing that in a second. Before we do,